In the middle of a pandemic, in the wake of George Floyd's unaliving, and when the country was confronting racism in ways it hadn't in decades, HBO dropped Lovecraft Country. The timing couldn't have been more perfect or more necessary. This wasn't just another horror series. It was a reclamation, a reimagining, and a reckoning all at once. Executive produced by Jordan Peele and J.J. Abrams, developed by showrunner Misha Green, and based on Matt Ruff's genre-bending novel, Lovecraft Country took the cosmic horror of a notoriously racist author and transformed it into something revolutionary. It used monsters and magic to talk about the real horrors of Jim Crow America, and in doing so, it created television that was as beautiful as it was terrifying, as entertaining as it was essential. Fact number 1. Let's start at the beginning, because the origin story of Lovecraft Country is fascinating. Author Matt Ruff, a Seattle-based writer, initially conceived this entire universe not as a novel, but as a TV series pitch way back in 2007. His concept? The X-Files if Mulder and Scully were Black travel writers in the Jim Crow era. Can you imagine pitching that in 2007? The audacity, the vision, the sheer originality of it. Ruff envisioned a family who owned a travel agency and published a fictional version of the Negro Motorist Green Book, that real-life guide that told Black travelers which hotels and restaurants would actually serve them during segregation. His protagonist, Atticus, would drive around the country searching for safe places to stay while simultaneously having paranormal adventures. It was brilliant. It was ambitious. And nobody in Hollywood was interested. So Ruff did what any determined storyteller would do. He turned the concept into a novel instead. But here's where it gets really clever. He structured the book specifically to feel like a television season, creating what he called a binge read experience. Each chapter functioned like an episode, with its own story arc while contributing to the larger narrative. The book was designed from the ground up to prove that his original TV concept could work. And guess what? It did. Published in 2016, right as Jordan Peele was wrapping Get Out, the book landed in exactly the right hands at exactly the right moment. Fact number 2. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, or more accurately, the horror writer in the title. H.P. Lovecraft created some of the most influential horror fiction of the 20th century. His cosmic dread, his eldritch creatures, his sense of humanity's insignificance in a vast and indifferent universe. These concepts shaped modern horror. But Lovecraft was also deeply, virulently racist, even by the standards of his own time in the 1920s and 30s. What Matt Ruff and Misha Green did with Lovecraft Country was nothing short of revolutionary. They took Lovecraft's entire aesthetic, the monsters, the forbidden knowledge, the cosmic horror, and reclaimed it. They used Lovecraftian horror not to represent alien threats from beyond, but to represent the very real fear that Black Americans faced from racism during the Jim Crow era and beyond. Think about how brilliant that is. Lovecraft's original stories often dealt with fear of the other, fear of mixing bloodlines, fear of what was different. Lovecraft Country flips that entirely. It says, yes, there are monsters in America, but the real monsters aren't creatures from beyond the stars. They're racist white people who lynch, who burn, who pass laws designed to oppress. By taking Lovecraft's tools and using them against his own prejudices, the series becomes both a celebration of the horror genre and a damning critique of the racism baked into its history. Fact number 3. One of the most powerful aspects of Lovecraft Country is how it weaves real historical events throughout the narrative. This isn't just set dressing or period detail. The show puts its characters face to face with actual American atrocities, forcing viewers to confront history they might prefer to forget. The series references the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921, when a white mob destroyed the prosperous black neighborhood of Greenwood, killing hundreds and displacing thousands. It depicts the unaliving of Emmett Till in 1955, the 14-year-old boy who was lynched in Mississippi for allegedly offending a white woman. These aren't just mentioned in passing, they're integral to the characters' experiences and trauma. By interweaving these real events with supernatural horror, Lovecraft Country makes a devastating point. The actual terror that Black Americans faced from white supremacy was just as horrifying as any monster you could imagine. In fact, it was worse, because it was real, it was systematic, and it was sanctioned by law. The show refuses to let viewers escape into fantasy. It constantly reminds you that while the shoggoths and magic might be fictional, the racism depicted was everyday reality for millions of people. Fact number 4. Here's a detail that'll break your heart if you know the history. In the show, Diana, the young daughter of George and Hippolyta, has a friend nicknamed Bobo. It seems like just a kid's nickname, casual and cute, but it's actually a deliberate reference to Emmett Till's real-life nickname. Emmett Till was called Bobo by his family and friends. By giving this nickname to a character in Diana's storyline, the show creates a haunting connection. It reminds us that Emmett Till wasn't just a historical figure or a tragedy in a textbook. He was a real kid with a nickname, with friends, with a whole life ahead of him that was stolen by racist violence. This kind of thoughtful detail is what made Lovecraft Country so powerful. The writers didn't just want to tell you about history, they wanted you to feel it, to connect with it on a human level. By putting that nickname in a child's mouth, by making it part of everyday life in the show, they made Emmett Till's story personal in a way that history books rarely achieve. It's a small detail that carries enormous weight for anyone who catches it. Fact number 5. The first episode of Lovecraft Country contains a moment that's both visually stunning and historically significant. There's a scene where Black Americans are lined up in front of a billboard that reads "World's Highest Standard of Living," with an image of a happy white family. This is a nearly perfect recreation of a famous 1937 photograph by Margaret Bourke White. The original photograph was taken during the Great Depression, showing Black flood victims waiting in a relief line beneath that ironic billboard. The contrast between the promise of American prosperity on the billboard and the reality of Black Americans' experiences was stark and devastating. Bourke White's photograph became an iconic image of racial inequality in America. By recreating this photograph in the series, Lovecraft Country immediately establishes its commitment to historical accuracy, alongside its supernatural elements. It's saying, before we show you monsters and magic, we need you to understand the real world these characters are living in. The segregation depicted in the show isn't exaggerated for dramatic effect. It's meticulously researched and faithfully represented. That authenticity makes the fantasy elements hit even harder, because you trust that the show isn't taking the easy way out or sanitizing history for comfort. Fact number 6. Let's talk monsters. In H.P. Lovecraft's original stories, creatures called shoggoths are described as protoplasmic blobs with multiple eyes, formless, oozing masses of alien biology. But in the HBO series, the shoggoths look completely different. They're depicted as hulking, fanged creatures that resemble werewolves, with glowing eyes and terrifying presence. This wasn't just a creative choice, it was a deliberate transformation. Showrunner Misha Green worked with Oscar-winning creative studio Framestore to reimagine these monsters. She had a specific vision. She wanted creatures that felt physically threatening, that could chase you through the woods, that combined the visceral horror of classic movie monsters with Lovecraft's cosmic dread. The redesigned shoggoths serve the story in a specific way. When Atticus, Letty, and George are being chased through those terrifying woods by both racist cops and these creatures, the monsters become a metaphor. They're the physical manifestation of America's original sin, slavery and racism, literally hunting Black people through the darkness. By making them wolf-like rather than blob-like, the show makes them more immediate, more personal, more connected to the history of violence against Black bodies in America. Fact number 7. Uncle George makes a fascinating discovery about the shoggoths that adds another layer of meaning to these creatures. He figures out that they share vulnerabilities with classic vampires. They fear light and can only operate in darkness. This isn't just a convenient plot device, it's deeply symbolic. Think about what that means. These monsters, which represent the horrors of racism and oppression, can only exist in darkness. Bring them into the light, and they become vulnerable. It's a perfect metaphor for how racism operates, in shadows, in secret, in coded language and unspoken rules. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, as the saying goes, and that's literally true for the shoggoths. By connecting these Lovecraftian creatures to vampire lore, the show also ties them to centuries of monster mythology. Vampires have always been about forbidden desire, about predation, about the aristocracy feeding on the working class. The shoggoths inherit all that metaphorical weight while adding new layers specific to the Black American experience. They can only hunt at night, just like how lynchings often happened under cover of darkness, how the Klan wore hoods, how racism in America has always tried to hide its face while doing its terrible work. Fact number 8. One of the most disturbing sequences in the entire series involves two creatures called Topsy and Bopsy, sinister dancing twin monsters that torment young Diana. These aren't just random creepy characters. They're based on the grotesque and racist pickaninny caricature that appeared in minstrel shows and old advertising throughout American history. Pickaninny imagery depicted Black children as ugly, stupid, and less than human. It was used to dehumanize Black people and justify their mistreatment. By bringing these racist caricatures to literal life as monsters, Lovecraft Country makes visible the trauma that these images inflicted and continue to inflict. Topsy and Bopsy are Diana's nightmare made manifest, representing how racist imagery can haunt and damage Black children. The genius of this approach is that it doesn't just tell you that racist caricatures are harmful, it shows you viscerally what that harm feels like. When Diana is being terrorized by these creatures, we're watching a visualization of psychological trauma, of what it means to grow up in a world that constantly shows you degrading images of people who look like you. It's horror that operates on multiple levels simultaneously, and it's absolutely devastating. Fact number 9. Atticus's love interest Ji-ah brings an entirely different cultural mythology into the story. She's a kumiho, a nine-tailed fox spirit from Korean folklore who must devour 100 men to become human. In traditional Korean legends, kumiho are typically portrayed as seductive and deadly creatures, femme fatales who lure men to their doom. But Lovecraft Country does something beautiful with this myth. Instead of making Ji-ah a straightforward villain, the show gives her depth, humanity, and an empathetic backstory. We learn how she became a kumiho, the trauma she endured, and her desperate desire to break free from the curse. She's not a monster. She's a victim of circumstance, trying to survive in a world that's done terrible things to her. By including Korean mythology alongside Lovecraftian horror and African American history, the series expands its scope. It reminds us that America isn't just a black and white story. There are multiple immigrant experiences, multiple cultural traditions, multiple forms of oppression that intersect. Ji-ah's storyline also connects to the Korean War, and America's military presence in Asia, adding another layer of critique about American imperialism and how it traumatizes people around the world. Fact number 10. The haunted Winthrop House that Letty buys might seem like standard horror fare. Ghosts, creepy rooms, mysterious deaths. But those spirits have a basis in actual American horror. The ghosts are revealed to be Black people who were victims of a racist doctor who conducted medical experiments on them without consent. This is a direct nod to the horrifying real-world history of medical experimentation on Black Americans. From the Tuskegee syphilis study, where Black men were deliberately left untreated for decades, to the story of Henrietta Lacks, whose cells were taken without permission, to countless enslaved people who were used as experimental subjects. American medicine has a long, shameful history of treating Black bodies as disposable research material. By making the Winthrop House ghosts victims of medical racism, Lovecraft Country ensures that even its supernatural elements remain grounded in historical truth. These aren't just random spirits. They represent real people who suffered real atrocities in the name of science. When Letty works to give them peace, she's not just performing an exorcism. She's acknowledging their humanity, their suffering, and the justice they were denied in life. It's a powerful statement about memory, reparation, and the ghosts that still haunt America. Fact number 11. The magic system in Lovecraft Country is fascinating and specific. Christina teaches Ruby that magic requires 3 essential components beyond just an incantation: intention, a location, and a body. This isn't Harry Potter-style wand-waving. It's something more visceral, more costly, more connected to the physical world. The emphasis on a body is particularly significant. Throughout the series, we see magic that requires blood, sacrifice, physical transformation. It's body horror in the most literal sense. This connects magic to the history of how Black bodies have been used, abused, and exploited in America. Magic in this world isn't clean or easy. It demands something from you. It leaves marks. It changes you. The requirement for a specific location ties magic to place and history. Certain spells can only be performed in certain spots because of what happened there, who died there, what trauma soaked into the ground. This makes magic feel like it's connected to the land itself, to the history written in blood and bone across America. It's a brilliant way of literalizing how history shapes the present, how trauma gets passed down, how the past is never really past. Fact number 12. Here's a twist that absolutely floored viewers when it was revealed. William and Christina are the same person. Throughout most of the series, we see these 2 characters separately. Christina Braithwaite, the ambitious daughter trying to claim her father's magical legacy, and William, her loyal subordinate who seems to be helping her. But the body horror transformation that Ruby undergoes foreshadows this revelation. When Ruby drinks the potion that turns her into a white woman, we see the horrifying physical process, her skin splitting, her body reshaping itself. It's one of the most disturbing sequences in the show, and the series actually drops subtle clues throughout, like dresses hanging in William's closet, his absence whenever Christina appears, small continuity details that sharp-eyed viewers might catch on first watch. The reveal that William is Christina using magic to inhabit a male body adds layers of commentary about gender, power, and identity. Christina can only claim her father's legacy by literally becoming a man, because that's how deeply sexism is baked into the magical order. It's a brilliant exploration of how different forms of oppression intersect. Christina has white privilege and wealth, but she's still constrained by misogyny. The body swapping becomes a metaphor for the performances we all do to navigate power structures. Fact number 13. As the series progresses, it becomes clear that the women in Atticus's bloodline, his ancestors, his mother's spirit, and Letty, are actually the most powerful spellcasters in the story. This isn't just feminist wish fulfillment, it's a deliberate reframing of who gets to wield power and how. In the finale, the spell that binds all white people from using magic is created and performed by these women. It's their power, their sacrifice, their magic that saves the community and prevents future harm. This is revolutionary in the context of both horror and Black history. So often, Black women are either invisible in narratives or positioned as victims. Lovecraft Country gives them agency, power, and the ability to literally rewrite reality. This focus on women's magic also connects to real history. Throughout the African diaspora, women have been keepers of spiritual traditions, healers, practitioners of folk magic and religion. By centering Black women as the most powerful magical beings in the story, the show honors that legacy while imagining what it would mean if that power could be wielded to protect and liberate rather than just survive. Fact number 14. Now, let's talk about filming locations, because there's a delicious connection here for horror fans. The Ardham Lodge, that imposing, ominous mansion where so much of the first episode's action takes place, is actually Bisham Manor in LaGrange, Georgia. And if you're a Netflix horror fan, you've definitely seen this mansion before. Bisham Manor was used for the exterior shots of the titular home in The Haunting of Hill House, that brilliant 2018 series that terrified everyone. The same mansion that housed the Crane family's ghosts became the Sons of Adam's Lodge in Lovecraft Country. Production used CGI to enlarge the building, adding extra floors, new wings, and that striking glass dome on top. But the core structure is the same. Built in the 1920s and extensively refurbished between 1997 and 2002, this English Tudor-style mansion has become the go-to location for Gothic horror in the streaming era. There's something about its architecture, those steep roofs, the stone facade, the way it sits on its property, that just screams haunted. For Lovecraft Country, they even used the actual interior staircase and halls of Bisham Manor, not just the exterior, giving the lodge scenes an authentic weight and presence. Fact number 15. Here's our final fact, and it's appropriately dark. One of the Chicago locations transformed into Denmark Vesey's bar for the show has a genuinely disturbing real-life history. The L&L Tavern, which served as the filming location, was reportedly a hangout for not one, but two of America's most notorious serial killers, John Wayne Gacy and Jeffrey Dahmer. Denmark Vesey was a real historical figure, a formerly enslaved man who planned a large slave rebellion in Charleston in 1822. He was executed before the rebellion could occur, but he became a symbol of resistance. By naming their bar after Vesey in the show, the characters are claiming a space of Black resistance and community. The irony that this space is actually a location connected to real-world evil adds an unintentional layer of darkness to those scenes. This kind of historical convergence, using a real location with its own dark history to represent a fictional place named after a historical freedom fighter, feels almost too perfect for Lovecraft Country. The show was always about how past and present bleed together, how history haunts us, how the places we inhabit carry the weight of everything that happened there before. Even the filming locations themselves ended up reflecting those themes. Lovecraft Country ran for one perfect season before HBO canceled it in 2021, despite its critical acclaim, strong viewership, and 18 Emmy nominations. The cancellation was controversial. Some attributed it to behind-the-scenes issues, others to the network's changing priorities. Whatever the reason, we were robbed of seeing where Misha Green would have taken the story next. But what we got those 10 extraordinary episodes, remains essential viewing. Lovecraft Country proved that horror could be smart, political, and entertaining all at once. It showed that you could take a deeply problematic author's work and transform it into something that directly challenges his racism. It demonstrated that genre television could tackle serious historical trauma while still being wildly inventive and fun. The series featured breakthrough performances from Jonathan Majors and Jurnee Smollett, who brought depth and humanity to every scene. It gave us unforgettable images, that opening sequence mixing science fiction and history, the transformation scenes, the final spell that literally rewrites the rules of magic. It trusted its audience to handle complexity, to sit with discomfort, to think about what they were watching rather than just consuming it. Jordan Peele's influence is all over this series, from the social commentary embedded in every horror sequence to the refusal to let white audiences off the hook. Misha Green took his vision and Matt Ruff's novel and created something uniquely her own, television that honors the past while imagining futures of resistance and power. J.J. Abrams brought his production expertise and commitment to ambitious storytelling. What makes Lovecraft Country particularly powerful in hindsight is its timing. It premiered in August 2020, during the height of pandemic lockdown, just months after George Floyd's unaliving sparked nationwide protests. The show's exploration of racism, police violence, and systemic oppression wasn't just relevant, it was necessary. It gave people a way to process their rage and grief through the lens of fantasy and horror. The series also expanded representation in genre television. It showed Asian characters, Korean mythology, and immigrant experiences alongside the Black American story. It featured queer characters and relationships without making them tragic or performative. It centered women's power and intelligence. It proved that you could tell stories about marginalized people that were both commercially successful and artistically ambitious. Lovecraft Country joins a lineage of Black horror that includes Candyman, Get Out, Us, and other works that refuse to separate entertainment from social commentary. It stands as proof that the genre has always been at its best when it's holding up a mirror to society's darkest impulses. And by reclaiming H.P. Lovecraft's cosmic horror for the people he would have hated, the show performs a kind of cultural exorcism, taking back the things that were used to harm us and transforming them into tools of resistance. These 15 facts only scratch the surface of what made Lovecraft Country special. Every episode was packed with historical references, literary allusions, and visual symbolism. The costumes, the music, the production design, all of it worked together to create a world that felt both period authentic and magically heightened. It's the kind of show you can watch multiple times and discover new layers each viewing. Though we'll never see season 2, what we have remains powerful and complete in its own way. Sometimes one perfect season is enough to change the conversation, to inspire other creators, to prove what's possible when you trust your vision and refuse to compromise. Lovecraft Country did all of that and more. It reclaimed horror for the people who've always been its targets, and in doing so, it created something truly magical. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the Lovecraft Country series, don't forget to like this video, share it with other fans, and subscribe to our channel for more wild facts about your favorite urban horror films and series. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another upload. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.